Bureaucratic incompetence reaches new heights when politicians try to understand xenobiology. The Galactic Harmony Council had spent 3 standard months debating whether humans should be allowed to continue their inappropriate fraternization with apex predator species, as if friendship required legislative approval and emotional bonds needed governmental oversight. Today's emergency session had been called specifically to address the human problem, which was council terminology for things we do not understand, and therefore must regulate into submission. The Grand Chamber buzzed with the sort of self-important energy that came from beings who had never encountered a dangerous situation more threatening than a strongly worded diplomatic protest. Council Speaker Vex Moraine, an imposing Zentari whose purple skin currently reflected bureaucratic authority, called the session to order with the theatrical gravity that politicians reserved for issues they intended to solve through committee formation rather than actual action. "Distinguished delegates," Moraine announced, her 4 arms gesturing toward the massive display screens showing footage from various research facilities. "We are here to address the alarming trend of human researchers forming unauthorized emotional attachments to classified predator species." The footage currently showed Dr. Kate Fisher, a human xenobiologist, sitting calmly in what appeared to be a feeding area, while 6 Sythrak cubs sprawled around her like oversized deadly house pets. The cubs, each weighing roughly 150 pounds, and possessing claws that could shred titanium, were nuzzling against her with obvious affection. "As you can observe," Moraine continued, "this human is engaging in behavior that violates every established safety protocol regarding apex predator interaction. She has somehow convinced these creatures to abandon their natural hunting instincts in favor of whatever this display represents." "Friendship," called out Ambassador Nira Voss from the human delegation, her voice carrying the sort of patient exasperation that came from explaining obvious concepts to willfully ignorant audiences. "The display represents friendship, Speaker Moraine." "Impossible," declared Research Director Keth Zorn, a Corellian whose metallic features gleamed with academic certainty. "Sythrak cubs are classified as non-sentient predators driven purely by territorial and feeding instincts. They are incapable of forming emotional bonds with other species." "Then perhaps," Ambassador Voss suggested with diplomatic politeness that barely concealed her irritation, "your classification system needs updating." The chamber erupted in the sort of indignant chattering that politicians produced when confronted with evidence that contradicted their carefully maintained worldviews. Various delegates began shouting about established science, proper procedures, and the obvious impossibility of apex predators developing social attachments. "Order," Speaker Moraine demanded, though her own skin had shifted to confused orange patterns that suggested she was struggling to process the implications herself. "The question before this council is not whether such bonds are possible, but whether they should be permitted to continue." "Permitted," Ambassador Voss repeated, her tone carrying dangerous calm. "Speaker Moraine, are you suggesting that the council has authority to regulate friendship between consenting beings?" "These are not consenting beings," protested Dr. Thex Kane, the council's chief xenobiologist. "They are dangerous predators that pose a significant threat to galactic security. The fact that one human has somehow manipulated them into docile behavior does not change their fundamental nature." On the display screens, Kate had begun what appeared to be a feeding session, though instead of the violent competition expected from apex predators, the cubs were taking turns approaching food dispensers in an orderly fashion, while she provided gentle guidance and encouragement. "Manipulation?" Ambassador Voss's voice carried the sort of edge that preceded diplomatic incidents. "Dr. Kane, would you care to explain how showing respect and kindness qualifies as manipulation?" "Because it defies natural behavior patterns," Kane replied, his blue skin flushing darker with academic frustration. "Sythrak cubs compete violently for resources. They do not share, they do not cooperate, and they certainly do not defer to members of other species." "Maybe," Kate's voice crackled through the chamber's communication system as she overheard the debate. "They just needed someone to teach them that. Cooperation works better than competition." The entire council chamber fell silent as delegates realized the human researcher was monitoring their discussion from her position among 6 deadly predators. "Dr. Fisher," Speaker Moraine said carefully, You are aware that you are currently surrounded by creatures capable of killing you without effort? I am also surrounded by 6 individuals who have chosen to be my friends, Kate replied cheerfully. They could have attacked me months ago when we first met. Instead, they decided they liked me. That seems like a pretty clear demonstration of choice and intelligence to me. Impossible, Director Zorn repeated, though his conviction seemed to be wavering. Predators do not make friendship choices based on emotional preference. Tell that to them, Kate suggested. Hey, beautiful ones. These people think you are not smart enough to choose your own friends. What do you think about that? The 6 cubs immediately vocalized in response, their complex harmonies creating sounds that the chamber's translation systems struggled to process. After several seconds, the computers managed disagreement/offense at dismissal/demonstration of intelligence/protective stance toward human companion. The silence that followed was so complete that you could have heard a diplomat's integrity dropping. They are communicating, whispered Council Member Yara Knox, a Delphian whose pale features had gone even paler. Apex predators are engaging in linguistic communication. Not just communicating, Kate corrected. They are telling you that they find your assumptions insulting, and that they are perfectly capable of making their own decisions about friendship. One of the larger cubs moved closer to Kate, positioning itself between her and the observation area, in what could only be described as a protective stance. Fascinating, Dr. Kane breathed, his scientific curiosity finally overriding his bureaucratic resistance. The specimen is displaying protective behavior toward a non-pack member. This challenges fundamental assumptions about predator social structure. Specimen? Kate's voice carried sharp disapproval. His name is Maximus, and he is not a specimen. He is a friend who happens to be concerned about people who speak about him like he is not right here listening to every word. Maximus vocalized again, his tone unmistakably agreeing with Kate's statement. Correct identification, appreciation for respectful designation/continued protective posture. This is unprecedented, Speaker Moraine admitted, her skin cycling through colors that indicated complete bewilderment. If these creatures possess linguistic capabilities and emotional intelligence, their legal status under galactic law becomes complicated. Complicated how? Ambassador Voss asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the answer. Sentient beings have rights, Councilmember Knox said weakly, including the right to choose their own associations and living arrangements. The implications of this revelation rippled through the chamber like shockwaves from a stellar explosion. If Sythrak cubs qualified for sentient protection, every research facility holding them would face immediate legal challenges. Entire scientific programs would require ethical review. Military training protocols would need complete revision. This cannot be accurate, Director Zorn protested desperately. Our research has clearly established that Sythrak individuals lack the cognitive complexity for advanced social reasoning. Your research, Kate replied with obvious irritation, consisted of observing them from behind barriers while treating them like laboratory equipment. You never actually tried talking to them or treating them like individuals. Because they are dangerous predators. They are individuals who happen to be predators, Kate corrected. There is a significant difference, and the dangerous part only applies when they feel threatened or disrespected. To demonstrate her point, she began gently scratching behind one cub's ears, eliciting a sound that could only be described as purring from a creature supposedly incapable of contentment. The cubs are displaying affectionate behavior, Dr. Kane observed with obvious amazement. This contradicts every established theory about their species. Maybe your theories were wrong, Kate suggested. Maybe instead of studying them like objects, someone should have tried getting to know them as individuals. The chamber erupted again as delegates began debating the legal implications of recognizing apex predators as sentient beings. The bureaucratic complexity alone would keep lawyers busy for decades, while the scientific community would need to reevaluate centuries of established doctrine. Dr. Fisher, Speaker Moraine called out over the chaos, assuming these beings do qualify for sentient protection, what would they want in terms of living arrangements and legal status? Kate consulted quietly with the cubs, their vocalizations creating a complex conversation that the translation systems worked overtime to process. They want recognition as individuals rather than specimens, she reported. They want choice in their living situations, and the people they associate with. They want respect for their intelligence and emotional needs. Basically, they want what any sentient being wants: dignity and self-determination. And what about their relationship with you specifically? Ambassador Voss asked. They have chosen me as their friend and advocate, Kate replied simply. They trust me to represent their interests and protect them from people who want to treat them like weapons or research subjects. Chosen you? Director Zorn repeated. Are you claiming these creatures have made a conscious decision to form a social bond with a human? I am not claiming anything, Kate said. They are telling you themselves. Listen to them instead of talking about them like they are not here. Maximus vocalized a long, complex statement that the translation systems rendered as conscious choice confirmed are human, demonstrates respect and understanding/protective bond formed through mutual trust/request for recognition of relationship validity. He just formally requested recognition of their friendship, Ambassador Voss pointed out with obvious satisfaction, in front of the entire Galactic Council. That sounds like legal standing to me. The bureaucratic implications were staggering. If the Cubs could formally request legal recognition, they possessed the cognitive capacity to participate in legal proceedings. If they could choose their own advocates, they had agency under interspecies law. If they could articulate their own needs and preferences, they qualified for full sentient protection. This changes everything, Speaker Moraine said weakly, her skin now displaying patterns of complete overwhelm. Our entire approach to apex predator research, military training protocols, legal classifications, everything would need revision. Not everything, Kate interjected. Just the parts based on incorrect assumptions about their intelligence and emotional capacity. The other 5 Cubs had arranged themselves in a protective circle around Kate and Maximus, their golden eyes scanning the observation area with obvious wariness. Their message was clear. They considered the human under their protection, and anyone who threatened her would face the coordinated response of 6 apex predators. They are guarding her, Council Member Knox observed with wonder. Not just one individual, but the entire group. They have formed a collective protective bond around their human friend. Because they recognize that some beings in this chamber view friendship as a problem to be solved, rather than a relationship to be respected, Kate explained. They are protecting me from political interference in our personal bonds. Political interference? Speaker Moraine protested. We are simply trying to establish appropriate regulations for interspecies contact. You are trying to regulate friendship, Ambassador Voss corrected sharply, which is both legally questionable and morally reprehensible. The Cubs' vocalizations grew more intense, their harmonized response creating complex linguistic patterns that conveyed unmistakable unity of purpose. Collective protective stance/opposition to regulatory interference /demand for relationship autonomy/warning against separation attempts. They are threatening us, Director Zorn said nervously. They are establishing boundaries, Kate corrected. They are making it clear that they will not tolerate attempts to separate them from their chosen friend or deny their right to make their own social decisions. The protective formation around Kate had shifted subtly, with each Cub now facing a different section of the observation area. Their coordination was flawless, their intent unmistakable, and their capability to carry out their implicit threats absolutely certain. This session is adjourned, Speaker Moraine announced hastily. We need time to consult legal experts regarding the implications of recognizing apex predators as sentient beings with relationship rights. Good idea, Kate said cheerfully. While you are consulting experts, we will be here demonstrating that friendship between species is not only possible but beneficial for everyone involved. As the council chamber emptied in bureaucratic confusion, Kate remained seated among her protective circle of apex predators, living proof that respect and kindness could overcome any barrier between species. The Cubs had made their choice, and they were prepared to defend it against anyone who failed to understand that intelligence and emotion came in many forms throughout the galaxy. 3 hours later, The emergency reconvening of the council session produced even more spectacular displays of political panic than the first attempt. Legal experts had arrived from across the galaxy, each one carrying datapads filled with precedents that apparently made the situation worse rather than better. "The legal ramifications are catastrophic," announced Chief Jurisprudence Officer Dex Vale, a Corellian whose metallic features reflected the sort of professional horror that came from discovering loopholes large enough to drive entire star systems through. "If we recognize Sythrak cubs as sentient, it creates precedent for reviewing the status of every apex predator species currently classified as non-intelligent." "How catastrophic?" Speaker Moraine asked, though her skin pattern suggested she was already regretting the question. "Approximately 400 research facilities across 17 star systems would face immediate ethical investigations," Vale replied with grim precision. "Military training programs using predator species would require complete overhaul. Colonial defense protocols would need revision. The legal challenges alone could collapse our court systems." Down in the habitat, Kate had apparently decided to make the council's day even more interesting by conducting what appeared to be language lessons with the cubs. They were practicing complex vocalizations while she provided encouragement and correction. "Excellent pronunciation, Shadow," Kate praised as one of the smaller cubs managed a particularly difficult harmonic sequence. "Your linguistic skills are developing remarkably quickly." Shadow preened at the compliment, then attempted an even more complex pattern that the translation systems rendered as "gratitude for patient instruction / pride in learning achievement / curiosity about human language structures." "Oh, wonderful," muttered Council Member Knox. "Now they are actively learning enhanced communication skills. This keeps getting better." "Actually," interrupted Dr. Finn Cross, a human linguist who had just arrived with the legal team, "this is fascinating from an academic standpoint. If Sythrak individuals can master complex linguistic patterns this quickly, their cognitive capacity exceeds most established sentient species." "Dr. Cross," Speaker Moraine said carefully, "are you suggesting these cubs are more intelligent than previously recognized?" "I am suggesting," Cross replied with academic excitement, "that they may be more intelligent than most of us." The implications of this statement sent fresh waves of panic through the assembled delegates. If apex predators possessed superior intelligence, the power dynamics of galactic civilization required complete reevaluation. "Impossible," Director Zorn protested, though his arguments were becoming increasingly desperate. Intelligence testing designed for cooperative species administered to beings treated as hostile specimens," Cross interrupted. "The methodology was flawed from the beginning." Kate looked up from her language lesson with obvious amusement. "Dr. Cross understands the problem. You cannot accurately assess someone's intelligence when you approach them with weapons drawn and treat them like dangerous animals." Maximus vocalized agreement. "Accurate assessment, previous testing conditions. Inappropriate demonstration of actual capabilities now possible." "He is commenting on research methodology," Cross observed with obvious delight. "An apex predator is critiquing our scientific approach. This is unprecedented." "This is a nightmare," Vale muttered, consulting his legal precedents with growing despair. "If they can critique methodology, they can challenge research ethics. If they can challenge ethics, they can demand legal representation. If they can demand representation, they become legal entities with rights," Ambassador Voss finished with obvious satisfaction, "which is exactly what should happen." Speaker Moraine's skin had progressed through so many color changes that she resembled a living kaleidoscope of bureaucratic distress. "Ambassador Voss, surely the human delegation recognizes the administrative complexity this situation creates?" "We recognize the administrative complexity of treating sentient beings like laboratory equipment," Voss replied sharply. "We also recognize the moral complexity of denying rights to intelligent individuals based on species classification." "But the security implications," protested Defense Coordinator Rex Hunt, a scarred Altarian whose 4 arms gestured urgently toward tactical displays. "These creatures possess capabilities that could threaten entire colonies if they chose to organize against us." The protective circle around Kate immediately tightened. 6 pairs of golden eyes focusing on Hunt with unmistakable hostility. "Did you just threaten our friend?" Kate asked, her voice carrying dangerous calm. "I was discussing hypothetical security scenarios," Hunt clarified hastily. "No," corrected Shadow, his vocalization sharp with anger. "You were suggesting we represent threat to innocent beings. This constitutes hostile intent toward our chosen family." "Chosen family?" Speaker Moraine repeated weakly. "They consider me family," Kate explained, her tones softening with obvious affection. "Not just a friend, but someone they have adopted into their social structure. That creates obligations on both sides." "What kind of obligations?" Vale asked with the expression of someone discovering new legal nightmares. "Protection, loyalty, mutual support," Kate replied. "The same obligations any family member has toward another." Maximus stood slowly, his massive form radiating controlled power as he addressed the council directly. "Family bonds transcend species. Boundaries/threat to human companion constitutes threat to pack/defensive responses will be proportional to perceived danger." "Are you threatening us?" Hunt demanded, his military training overriding his survival instincts. "We are establishing parameters for acceptable behavior toward our family member," Shadow replied with diplomatic precision that would have impressed career negotiators. "Continued attempts to separate us or deny our relationship validity will be met with appropriate resistance." "Appropriate resistance?" Hunt's skin flushed with the sort of aggressive colors that preceded interspecies incidents. 6 apex predators defending their chosen family, Kate observed mildly. "I would recommend avoiding that scenario if possible." The other cubs had risen as well, forming an impenetrable wall between Kate and the observation area. Their coordination was flawless, their intent unmistakable, and their capability to follow through absolutely terrifying. "This has escalated beyond administrative oversight," Speaker Moraine announced desperately. "We need to involve the Supreme Arbitration Court." "Excellent idea," Ambassador Voss agreed. "The cubs deserve proper legal representation for their sentience hearing." "Their what?" Vale asked with growing horror. "Sentience hearing," Cross explained cheerfully. "Standard procedure when previously classified non-sentient beings demonstrate cognitive capacity. The cubs have legal standing to petition for recognition." "And they will win," Voss added with satisfaction. "Given their demonstrated linguistic abilities, emotional complexity, social reasoning, and capacity for abstract thought." The cubs' vocalizations created a harmony of agreement. Formal petition for recognition, accepted - legal representation, requested determination to achieve appropriate status. "They want lawyers," Vale whispered. "Apex predators are requesting legal counsel." "Smart apex predators," Kate corrected, "who understand their rights and intend to exercise them." Speaker Moraine made a decision that would probably haunt administrative records for centuries. "This session is suspended pending Supreme Court review. All parties will maintain current status until legal determination is reached." "All parties?" Hunt asked suspiciously. "Dr. Fisher and her family will remain together during proceedings," Moraine clarified reluctantly. "Attempting separation could constitute rights violation if sentience is confirmed." "When sentience is confirmed," Ambassador Voss corrected. The cubs settled back into their protective formation around Kate, though their attention remained fixed on the observation area with obvious wariness. "This is probably the most important legal case in galactic history," Cross observed with academic excitement. "The first formal recognition of apex predator sentience." "The first recognition we know about," Kate replied thoughtfully. "I suspect there are others like my family scattered across research facilities throughout the galaxy. Others who have been waiting for someone to listen to them." Maximus vocalized complex agreement. Numerous isolated individuals, systematic denial of recognition, opportunity for species-wide liberation. "He is talking about freeing others," Cross interpreted with growing amazement. "They have a concept of collective justice that extends beyond personal circumstances." "Because they are not just intelligent," Kate explained. "They are ethical. They understand right and wrong, justice and injustice, freedom, and oppression. And they have chosen humans as allies in their fight for recognition, Ambassador Voss added with obvious pride. Not all humans, Shadow corrected with diplomatic precision. Specific humans who demonstrate respect and understanding discrimination based on individual character rather than species membership. They judge individuals rather than species, Cross marveled. That is sophisticated social reasoning that exceeds most established civilizations. Hunt had gone suspiciously quiet, his tactical displays showing deployment patterns that suggested military contingency planning. Coordinator Hunt, Kate said without turning around. My family can sense hostile intent from considerable distances. I would recommend against whatever you are considering. I am developing security protocols, Hunt replied defensively. You are planning containment strategies, Maximus corrected, his vocalization carrying unmistakable threat. This constitutes preparation for aggressive action against family unit. The 6 cubs moved with fluid precision, repositioning themselves to cover multiple approach angles while maintaining their protective formation around Kate. Their transformation from affectionate companions to coordinated tactical unit was instantaneous and absolutely terrifying. Stand down, Speaker Moraine ordered hastily. No containment actions will be taken pending legal resolution. Wise decision, Kate said approvingly. My family takes protection seriously. Over the following weeks, as legal preparations continued and media attention turned the case into galactic sensation, the Cubs demonstrated capabilities that shattered every assumption about apex predator limitations. They learned to operate communication systems, contributed to their own legal defense strategy, and established contact with other potentially sentient predators across multiple facilities. The breakthrough came when Maximus successfully established direct communication with a Vorthak Alpha, held at a military installation 3 systems away. The conversation, broadcast live across galactic networks, changed everything. Greetings, isolated brother, Maximus vocalized through the facility's long-range communication array. We have achieved recognition of our intelligence. Legal proceedings underway for species-wide sentience confirmation. The response from the distant Vorthak was immediate and emotionally complex. Hope acknowledged, gratitude for contact, request for assistance with own, liberation/confirmation of widespread intelligence suppression. He has been trying to communicate for years, Kate translated, her voice thick with emotion. They have all been trying to communicate, and we have been ignoring them. Dr. Cross was recording everything with obvious excitement. This is establishing a communication network between apex predators across multiple star systems. They are organizing. Organizing for what? Speaker Moraine asked, nervously. Justice, Shadow replied simply. Recognition of rights, liberation of imprisoned individuals, establishment of cooperative relationships with respectful beings. The Cubs had also begun demonstrating artistic capabilities that rivaled the most sophisticated cultural achievements of established civilizations. Using available materials in their habitat, they created complex sculptures that conveyed abstract concepts about freedom, family, and hope. These are not random arrangements, noted art specialist Vera Lane, a Delphian expert who had been called in to evaluate the Cubs' creations. These are sophisticated artistic expressions that demonstrate aesthetic awareness and symbolic thinking. Look at this piece, Kate said, guiding the specialist toward a particularly intricate sculpture. Maximus designed it to represent the concept of friendship transcending species boundaries. The artwork consisted of intertwined forms representing different biological structures, creating a unified composition that suggested harmony despite fundamental differences. The symbolic complexity is remarkable, Lane breathed. This demonstrates abstract reasoning that exceeds many established artistic traditions. My family has been creating art for months, Kate explained. I just finally convinced the facility to let someone with expertise examine their work. The Cubs had also begun teaching each other, sharing knowledge and skills in ways that suggested formal educational structures within their community. Shadow is particularly gifted with linguistic patterns, Kate observed, as the smaller cub helped his siblings master complex vocalizations. He has become their informal language instructor. Instructional methodology, observed, pedagogical principles, applied, Educational advancement of family unit, Shadow confirmed, his pride in teaching evident. They have developed their own educational system, Cross marveled. Peer-to-peer learning based on individual strengths and interests. But perhaps most remarkable was their development of what could only be described as philosophy. During extended conversations with Kate and visiting academics, the Cubs articulated complex ethical frameworks that addressed questions of morality, justice, and the nature of consciousness. What do you believe makes a being worthy of respect? Dr. Lisa Gray, a human philosopher, asked during one session. Maximus considered the question carefully before responding. Capacity for choice, ability to suffer, potential for growth and learning, existence of internal emotional life. That is a more sophisticated definition than most sentient species manage, Gray observed with obvious amazement. It also, added legal advocate Rex Stone, who had volunteered to represent the Cubs in their sentience hearing, creates a legal framework that would revolutionize rights recognition across the galaxy. The Cubs had begun holding what appeared to be council meetings, discussing complex issues and reaching consensus through democratic deliberation. They vote, Kate explained to increasingly amazed observers. When they face decisions that affect the group, they discuss options and vote on the best course of action. Democratic decision-making processes, Cross noted with excitement. They have independently developed political structures based on collective participation. The media coverage had attracted attention from advocacy groups across the galaxy, many of whom began questioning the treatment of apex predators in their own regions. Reports are coming in from 12 star systems, Ambassador Voss informed the Council during an emergency briefing. Facilities are reporting unusual behavior from previously classified non-sentient predators, attempts at communication, artistic expression, cooperative behavior. This is spreading, Speaker Moraine said weakly. Recognition is spreading, Kate corrected from her position among the Cubs. Intelligence was always there. People are just finally paying attention. The Cubs had also demonstrated remarkable emotional sophistication, particularly in their relationships with each other and with Kate. When one Cub, Luna, had fallen ill with a minor infection, the others had provided round-the-clock care that included emotional support, shared resources, and collaborative problem-solving to ensure her recovery. Their caregiving behavior exceeds that of many established civilizations, observed Medical Officer Dana White. They demonstrate empathy, sacrifice, and coordinated support that suggests advanced social bonds. Family takes care of family, Kate said simply. That is universal. The economic implications were also staggering. If apex predators qualified for sentient status, entire industries based on their exploitation would face immediate shutdown. Military contracts, research funding, colonial security programs, all would require ethical review. The financial disruption could destabilize multiple sectors, economic analyst Jake Moore warned during closed-door briefings. We are looking at trillions of credits in stranded assets. Maybe, Ambassador Voss replied coolly. Some assets deserve to be stranded. But the Cubs were already proposing solutions. During negotiations with council representatives, they outlined cooperative frameworks that could replace exploitative relationships with mutually beneficial partnerships. Our species possesses capabilities valuable to galactic civilization, Maximus explained during one session. Environmental knowledge, tactical expertise, problem-solving abilities. We offer partnership rather than servitude. They want to contribute, Kate interpreted. They want to be part of galactic society as equals, not as weapons or test subjects. The Cubs had even begun learning about human culture, expressing particular fascination with concepts of democracy, individual rights, and social justice. Why do humans fight for others? Of freedom? Shadow asked during one of their cultural exchange sessions. Because freedom is not something you can truly possess if others do not have it too, Kate replied. Oppression anywhere threatens justice everywhere. Philosophical principle, accepted commitment to universal liberation, confirmed alliance with human values affirmed, the Cubs responded in harmony. They are adopting human ethical frameworks, Cross observed with wonder. Not blindly, but selectively, choosing principles that align with their own moral reasoning. The final breakthrough came when the Cubs successfully convinced a group of Zentari researchers to recognize the sentience of apex predators in their own facility. The researchers, inspired by the Cubs' articulate arguments and demonstrated capabilities, became the first non-human advocates for predator rights. The movement is expanding beyond human advocacy, Ambassador Voss reported with obvious satisfaction. Other species are recognizing the validity of apex predator sentience claims. This is becoming unstoppable, Speaker Moraine observed, her skin patterns now reflecting resignation rather than panic. Recognition of truth usually is, Kate replied with satisfaction. The implications are staggering, Cross reported during one of his regular briefings. We are looking at systematic recognition of intelligence throughout species previously classified as non-sentient. How many species? Ambassador Voss asked. Potentially hundreds, Cross replied with obvious excitement. The Cubs have identified behavioral patterns in other predators that suggest widespread cognitive capacity. We may have been ignoring sentient beings for centuries. Kate sat surrounded by her protective family, all of them working together on communications with distant facilities where other apex predators were beginning to demonstrate their own intelligence. This is just the beginning, she said with satisfaction. My family is helping others find their voices. The Cubs' harmonized response carried determination that transcended species boundaries. Liberation of all intelligent beings, recognition of universal rights, partnership with humans who understand justice. Partnership, Speaker Moraine repeated during her final address to the Council. Between humans and apex predators. Between friends, Kate corrected from her position among 6 protective companions. Family does not require political approval. The Cubs' final statement to the Council was delivered in perfect harmony. Friendship transcends classification, family bonds exceed political authority, /love requires no legislative permission. And as I watched Kate surrounded by her chosen family of apex predators, all of them working together to liberate others like themselves, I realized that humans possessed something truly remarkable. The ability to see potential where others saw only categories, to recognize family where others saw only differences, and to choose love over fear even when confronted with beings that could destroy them without effort. The Cubs had found their voices, Kate had found her calling, and the galaxy was about to learn that intelligence, emotion, and the capacity for love existed in forms far more diverse than anyone had ever imagined. Sometimes the most important revolutions began with simple acts of friendship between beings who chose to see each other as individuals rather than classifications.